The night she gave away her last $10, the cold wind of the Chicago train station cut through her thin coat like a warning she could not afford to hear, and the echo of her own empty stomach felt louder than the trains themselves. Sarah Whitman stood near the flickering departure board with tired eyes and a heart worn thin by loss, unaware that this small, almost invisible moment would quietly collide with a future far greater than anything she had ever imagined. Before the story pulls you deeper into this moment, take a second and ask yourself this: do you believe a single act of kindness can change 2 lives at once? If you do, like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel to keep these true-to-life stories alive. Sarah was 28, living in a small basement apartment on the south side of the city, working long shifts at a nursing home where she changed sheets, lifted bodies heavier than her own exhaustion, and smiled for residents who rarely remembered her name. Her father, Michael Whitman, had passed away 2 years earlier from a heart condition, leaving behind hospital bills, an old pickup truck that barely ran, and a sense of responsibility that sat heavy on her shoulders. Her mother had disappeared from her life when she was a child, and the idea of family had slowly shrunk into something fragile and lonely. Every paycheck was already spoken for before it arrived, divided between rent, utilities, groceries, and a growing debt she pretended not to see. That evening, Sarah had missed her connecting train home after staying late to cover a shift for a coworker. The station smelled of damp concrete and burnt coffee, and the last vending machine light buzzed like it was struggling to stay awake. She counted the money in her wallet with careful fingers, already knowing the answer before she looked. $10. That was it. Enough for a cheap sandwich and a bus ride, or maybe just enough to get home and sleep through the hunger. She stood there calculating survival when she noticed him. He sat on a bench near the far wall, his shoulders slumped, his face drawn with a kind of quiet panic that felt familiar to her. He was well-dressed but disheveled, a dark coat wrinkled as if it had been slept in, his eyes fixed on the floor as if it might offer him a solution. There was something about his stillness that made Sarah pause. It was not the look of a man asking for help, but the look of someone who had never imagined needing it. As she passed him, she heard him speaking softly into his phone, the words barely carrying through the noise of the station. He was explaining that his wallet was gone, his cards canceled, his phone about to die, and his last train leaving without him. There was no anger in his voice, only disbelief, as if this situation belonged to someone else. Sarah slowed her steps, her heart tightening with a recognition she could not explain. She knew what it felt like to be stranded, not just in a place, but in life. She stood there for a moment, staring at the floor, arguing with herself. $10 meant a lot to her. It was dinner, it was security. It was the thin line between managing and falling further behind. But it was also the difference between someone getting home or sleeping on a bench under fluorescent lights, without thinking too hard, because thinking too hard would have stopped her. Sarah turned back and held out the folded bill. She did not ask for his story, and she did not explain her own. She simply placed the money in his hand with a quiet nod and walked away before he could say more than a stunned thank you. As Sarah boarded her bus later that night, hunger clawing at her insides, she told herself she had done the right thing even if it did not feel smart. She stared out the window as the city lights blurred together, wondering how long kindness could keep a person warm. By the time she reached her apartment, her phone buzzed with a message from her bank reminding her of an overdue payment. She turned the phone face down and let the silence settle in, unaware that somewhere else in the city, the man from the station was making calls that would change everything. His name was Jonathan Reed, though Sarah would not learn it for some time. Jonathan was the founder of a logistics software company based in San Francisco, a self-made millionaire whose life usually ran on schedules and private flights. That night, a canceled flight, a stolen wallet, and a dead phone battery had stripped him of every layer of comfort he relied on. Sitting alone on that bench, he had felt a fear he had not felt since his early 20s, when failure still seemed possible. Sarah's $10 had not just bought him a ticket and a meal, It had cracked open something he had sealed away long ago. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's life continued its familiar rhythm. Long shifts, aching feet, overdue bills. Her car finally broke down for good, forcing her to take 2 buses to work each day. One morning, she was called into her supervisor's office and told that hours were being cut. She nodded politely and walked back to her station, feeling the ground shift beneath her. That night, she sat on her bed, staring at the wall, wondering how much more she could bend before she broke. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. It was thick, expensive-looking, addressed in neat handwriting. Inside was a note explaining that a stranger she had helped weeks earlier had been searching for her, guided only by a vague description and a memory of her kindness. Enclosed was an invitation to meet at a downtown cafe. Sarah's first instinct was suspicion, followed by fear, followed by a quiet curiosity she could not ignore. When they met, she barely recognized him. Jonathan looked composed, confident, the exhaustion replaced by clarity. He told her everything, not in dramatic words, but in a steady explanation of who he was and what that night had meant to him. He spoke about how her action had reminded him of the person he used to be, before success had made him careful and distant. Sarah listened, stunned, her hands wrapped around a warm cup she had not paid for. Jonathan did not offer her money at first. Instead, he asked about her life, her work, her dreams, and the way she talked about caring for others made something shift in him. Weeks later, he called her with an opportunity. His company was opening a new support division in Chicago, and he wanted someone with empathy, patience, and integrity to help shape it. He offered training, a stable salary, and benefits she had never imagined having. Sarah cried that night, not because her problems were suddenly gone, but because someone had finally seen her. The job changed everything slowly, not in a dramatic rush, but in steady steps. She paid off debts, moved into a small sunlit apartment, and no longer fell asleep worrying about the next bill. She still worked hard, but the weight felt different now, lighter, shared. Years later, Sarah stood in that same train station, now renovated and bright, watching people hurry past. She volunteered there once a month, quietly helping travelers who found themselves lost or stranded. Jonathan had become a close friend, someone who never forgot where the turning point began. Neither of them believed the story was about money. They believed it was about timing, humanity, and the courage to give when it feels impossible. If this story is touching your heart right now, if it reminds you of a moment when kindness found you or someone you love, please take a second to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach the people who need them most. And before this story ends, leave a comment telling us one small act of kindness that changed your life or someone else's. Sarah never became famous, and Jonathan never claimed to be her savior. But in a world that often rushes past quiet suffering, their lives crossed for a moment and proved that even the smallest gift, given at the hardest time, can echo far beyond a train station on a cold night.